Hey folks, it is Alex here for Character Strength and Conditioning. Today we are talking about the Russian squat program. So it's really popular amongst weightlifters, amongst powerlifters to ramp up squat strength, but today we're going to be talking about, is it actually any good? Is it actually something we recommend? So I'm going to start by giving you a bit of background on the Russian squat program. We're going to go over the structure of the program. We're going to explain the Russian squat program in detail. We're going to go over some variations like the 2-day masters version and other RSR variations. We're going to go over the cons of the program, the pros of the program, and then come to some final recommendations on when it might be useful, where it might be useful, and what I think you might want to do. Shall we jump into it? Shall we do it? We're going to start with a little bit of background. If you are new to the channel, by the way, Character Strength and Conditioning is a business that I set up all about just providing high quality coaching based on my background in strength and conditioning, in weightlifting coaching and tutoring. I was basically just getting sick of fitness industry BS and the poor quality of content out there. So I thought I'd just start making it myself for the most part. I've scrolled you down, Russian squat program. I've got a beautiful picture of our Russian weightlifter Klokov here doing a ridiculously heavy pause front squat. Background on the program, right? So the Russian squat program, or RSR for short, because Russian squat program is a mouthful to say over and over. It's roughly based on some of the USSR squat yearbook book routines of like the 1970s. Specifically, there's a 1976 book called like Methods of Developing Leg Strength. It's not a thrilling read. It's been translated over the years. So basically, the Russian squat program is drawn from this. It has you squatting 3 times per week for 6 weeks, and the aim is to add about 5 to 10% to your squat max at the end of it. So on paper, at least, it looks like a really good choice to bring up a struggling squat. So if you are someone that's trying to bring up your squat, at least on paper, this seems like a solid option. Let's jump into an overview. So if you look at this, we've got the overall structure that I've written down here. It's a 6-week program and you'll squat 3 times per week. So you've got weeks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and various percentages ranging from about 80% up to your final workout, which is 105 to 110% of your current 1 rep max. We're going to work through what all that, like explain it sort of now and how that breaks down, because right now that looks like a fuck ton of random numbers. It's 6 weeks long, and you can essentially view it as 2 different strength training approaches used back to back. So weeks 1 to 3 are driven by increases in reps, whilst weeks 4 to 6 are driven more by increases in intensity. So if you look at the average sets and reps, the typical workout's going to have 4 to 6 sets. Reps are going to be between 2 and 6. All of these are going to be performed at 80 to 100% of 1 RM. So it's very classic strength work, very classic strength training approach. The weekly structure, the microcycle, it can look sort of complicated with all the different set rep percentage prescriptions at play each week, but if you look closely, it's actually fairly simple. So it uses like an alternating kind of pattern. So like starting strength has like an A, B, A, B, A, B pattern. It's exactly the same. The Russian squat program alternates between a moderate workout and an overloading workout, and it just goes, moderate, overload, moderate, overload, moderate, overload, rinse and repeat throughout the entire 6 weeks. So it has this natural wave of pushing hard, then backing off a bit, pushing hard, then backing off a bit. In terms of rest between sets, it's a really strict structure. So if you were going through this, research generally shows that 3 to 5 minutes rest is going to promote better strength results than resting for anything less than that. In my mind, anything up to 8 minutes is probably still totally acceptable to allow for full ATP resynthesis, recovery, especially if you're doing some of those hard overloading workouts. There's a 6x6 in there at some point at a disgusting percentage. You're going to want a bit longer time to rest, so take as long as you need to hit the exact sets and reps prescribed, because that's how the program's written. Accessory work on the program. For the most part, there's nothing prescribed. From what I can see, the Russian squat program, at least in its essentials, doesn't prescribe any work. In theory, we know that like muscle cross-sectional area, aka like your muscle size, it's a key factor in strength for experienced lifters. So usually adding accessory work would be a good idea, but what I've found from experience is that people that are doing the Russian squat routine, usually it's enough leg training on its own that by adding accessory work, what happens more often than not is you just can't recover from it. You just get too battered, your legs get hurt. And I'm not sure it actually adds much to the overall structure. So I'd say if you're running the squat program, I'd probably stay away from accessory work other than maybe some basic hamstring or glute work every now and again. But I'd for the most part, just stick to that as your main leg stuff. What I've done is in my little article here, I've included a calculator. I'll pop that down in the description below, just because it's a pain in the ass to try and calculate it all yourself. You can do it just, with a calculator for every single session, but I'll attach some spreadsheets and everything down in the description below, so you can just download it. The spreadsheet will calculate it all for you, and it'll stop you faffing around. Progression on the program. To break this down, to make it real clear, what I've done, The first weeks 1 to 3, the overloading workouts progress by reps. So workout 2 has 6 by 3, workout 4 has 6 sets of 4, workout 6 has 6 sets of 5, and then workout 8 has 6 sets of 6. And then in between each of those workouts, so workouts 1, 3, 5, and 7, you'll do I think it's 6 sets of 2 at 80%. So all of these sort of sets are all let's see if I just hover over them. All of these are about 80% 1RM. But in between them, you'll have some 6 by 2 at 80% 1RM, sort of like slightly more moderate workouts interspersed in them. If we bring ourselves down a little bit, I'm going to have to work out on this screencast how to do the fancy like drawing stuff where you can highlight and draw. I'm working on it, guys. Weeks 4 to 6, the overloading workouts, this is where it moves more towards intensity. So you have 5 by 5 at 85%, 4 by 4 at 90%, 3 by 3 at 95%, 2 by 2 at 100, and then a single at 105 to 110. So you have that reduction in total session volume, but the increase in intensity. So a classic kind of linear approach. Question I get asked a lot as well, what about other training during RSR? Honestly, RSR's tough, especially some of the bigger overloading workouts. I'd probably just put the rest of your training to maintenance if I'm being completely honest with you. You can still do maybe a few deadlifts, bit of benching, snatching, clean and jerk, but I would think about dropping the total number of sets you do and dropping the weights you use because your legs are just going to be absolutely fried. The central nervous, the systemic fatigue from all those squats, it will spill over, so don't expect the rest of your training to be golden. It will take a hit. That's the drawback of this. And yeah, there's just a link to a spreadsheet. I'll pop it down in the description below if you are watching on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify or somewhere online, I'll try and link it in the show notes. That is just a little ad. So yeah, what I usually say is if this sounds like an absolute headache, trying to put all this together yourself, then you can just contact me for a custom program. I try to make them reasonably affordable. What we do is you just have a little check-in, you answer a few questions about goals, training history, equipment, and I'll craft something up for you. So if researching or your strength work is just getting on your nerves and you just want to follow something from a coach, get in touch and we'll sort that out. Let's move on down. Modifying the program. So the Russian squat routine. There are some variations you can use. So there's actually a 2-day routine that's called like a Russian Masters program. It is 2 days per week, and it follows actually the exact same structure as the regular Russian squat routine. It's just spread out over more weeks by about 2 to 3 extra weeks. So instead of the program taking 6 weeks, you'll do it in 8 or 9. Each week has a day 1, which is your moderate day, and then a day 2, which is your overloading day. So instead of being A, B, A, B, A, B, each week is simply A, B, and then week 2 is A, B, A, B. So it just follows that pattern. So it just spreads the workouts out a little bit more. It gives you a bit more recovery time, but the actual progression is identical. So there's not that much nuance in that program. You can also use the Russian squat program for bench, which I've actually used many times and found really successful. Higher volume, higher frequency benching, really good approach. So you can try that. I've also had people ask me if they can use this for front squats. I wouldn't recommend it, if I'm honest. You technically can, but unless you have a really comfortable front rack position up here, what you're going to find is the high frequency of front squatting, it's just going to stress your elbows and your wrists and your upper back way more than it develops your legs. So I generally wouldn't. Try it, if you have a super comfortable front squat. But if you have a super comfortable front squat, chances are you don't need to be focusing on front squats. So just some thoughts. Right, let's hit the meat and potatoes of this bad boy. The pros, what I think is the really good things about this program. So I think the RSR, it uses repetitions to increase volume, and then it reduces volume while ramping intensity. For me, this gives it a really classic linear or even block periodization feel. I like that a lot. It has a solid evidence-based structure. I like that. That's a good thing. That's a pro of the program. I like that it alternates between these overload and these moderate days. So it means that you've got this natural flow of pushing hard and backing off, which allows for some recovery. I also like that it has plenty of conversation around it. So since the Russian squat program is pretty well known, it's been around for ages, been discussed, plenty of people have tried it and discussed it, it means that you go on Google, you type in like Russian squat program Reddit, Russian squat routine results, and you're going to get loads of experiences, some positive, some negative, some mixed, so you can really learn from other people's experiences and make those adjustments for yourself. The cons, and I think there's a few of these. I'm going to be honest with you. You're going to get a sense of where I'm driving with this. The total weekly volume can be too high for some people. In fact, probably too high for a lot of people. The Russian squat program has you performing like 16 to 18 sets of squats per week. If you compare that to something like the Texas method, where you perform 6 to 9 sets, or 5-3-1, where you perform 3 main sets plus 2 joker sets, that's close to triple the total workload. That's a fucking lot of work, and that's just too much for a lot of people to recover from. Next up, the moderate days may just not provide enough recovery. I do like the heavy, moderate, heavy approach, but the moderate day could be way lighter and far easier and still accomplish its purpose of not letting you regress. So the moderate day, for instance, could be 4 sets of 2 at 70 to 75%, but instead every single moderate day is 4x2 at 80, so 6x2 at 80%, which is still quite a challenging workout that you still have to get sort of in the zone, get your head going, focus up to get that done. You could go a little bit lighter and use a bit less volume and it still accomplish the purpose of that day. So it's not ideal. That just doesn't make sense objectively from a programming perspective. That day, sports science-wise, I think we've moved on about 50 years since then. You just wouldn't program that as a recovery or a light day anymore, at least not for anyone with a good lifting history. The last thing is it's hard to do your rest of your training around it. If you think about points 1 and 2, the high volume, the not enough recovery, it interferes with the rest of your program. It's hard to do anything other than squats. So yes, you can still do your bench, deadlift, overhead press, but you can't really simultaneously push them hard. They're going to probably have to go to maintenance, and for me that's a real drawback, because unless your squat is really shit, is really struggling and holding you back, you also want to be moving up the rest of your lifts. So that's a real drawback for me. My review, my overall conclusion. My Russian squat program review, does it work? I'd say yes, the Russian squat program works, but it only works if you can embrace the grind of high volume, high frequency squatting, and you're someone who recovers fast enough to not get run into the ground with it. And if I speak for myself, I speak for a lot of people that I've coached. I've been coaching for about a decade now. Most people run themselves into the ground with it. It just ends up being too much. Some people do great. But here's the problem. Most of the people that do great on the Russian squat routine are actually, they're sort of, they'd have done great on any routine. You know what I mean? Like, they're running the Russian squat routine, but they'd have done just as well on 5-3-1 or Texas method or Juggernaut. In fact, they'd have probably done better on those programs. If you actually talk to quite a few advanced lifters, people that really need to struggle to push their squat up, people that are lifting significant amounts, it's just going to grind you to dust. I would say practically there are far easier ways to increase your squat that have significantly less impacts on the rest of your training. So I would think of the Russian squat routine as a kind of last resort if regular approaches aren't working. So if you've tried other things, if you've maybe tried Texas method and 5-3-1, if you've then progressed onto something like Juggernaut, tried a simple linear periodization type block, and if it's still not working, if your squat's still not budging, then maybe you're going to have to go in hard with the Russian squat routine, push it and see if you can get that squat moving in the right direction. I hope that makes sense. We're going to move on. We've just got a few frequently asked questions that I just like to use to round up these things because I always get them. But if you have any additional questions, you can always bang them in the comments too. Russian squat program, frequently asked questions. All right. Who's it for? So I would say it's for advanced lifters who need to increase their squat, but they've not responded to conservative methods. So if this is you, if you've tried other stuff like Juggernaut 2.0 and your squat's not increased, try it out. Is it for masters lifters? RSR in its own? No, but you could use the 2-day per week Russian, the Russian masters program. That could potentially work, although I think there may be some lower volume approaches that might work better. Can you use it for powerlifting? Yes, but everything else will have to go to maintenance. Can you use RSR for hypertrophy? It's a naff choice, if I'm completely honest. The high volume, high frequency squatting might add some leg size, but the overall rep scheme's too low. There's not enough exercise variation for proper muscle development. I would try something more like, I'll see if I can link it in the notes if I remember. I have like a 4-day upper lower split hypertrophy program, 17 weeks, a much broader rep scheme, 5 to 30 reps. I would use something more focused on specifically targeting hypertrophy, so don't use this if your goal is just to get massive legs. And then some of the last ones I got asked is versus Smolov. Russian squat program is actually more manageable. Smolov is horrible. I'm going to do a separate review on Smolov soon. How to warm up? Be sensible. Take 3 or 4 warm-up sets before your lifts. And then how often can you do the Russian squat program? I would say as often as needed, but probably only when your squat's significantly lacking. So even if this does work for you, don't go trying to bang it out like every sort of few months. It's not a good idea. So keep it as a last resort kind of program, really. I finished this little article off with a nice little infographic that summarizes it, so I'll try and link that below as well. And that's it really for today. For now, I would say if you want more training tips, more workouts, programs, feel free to join my mailing list over on my website. I try and send out some good content pretty regularly. If you're looking for more individualized guidance, consider like having me write you a custom program, try and draw up your training for you. You might even want to try training with me one-on-one remotely, where we'll go through everything in a lot more detail, give you a lot more support with your strength training, with your progressions, just some things to consider. For today, that is it. If you found this video useful, if you just take 2 seconds just to quickly hit the like button, quickly subscribe, hit the notification bell if you feel that you want more of this content, more program reviews, that kind of stuff. And if you have any questions, any comments, drop them down below in the comment section. I'll get to you. If you're listening online, try and leave a quick review. Honestly, the more feedback you can give, the better I can try and make this content. That'll do for today. I hope you found this video useful, and I'm going to catch you in the next one. See you there.